Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are. My name's Andrew Grosset and welcome back to my channel. Before I get into this week's video, please, if you have just joined this series and you haven't seen any of the ones beforehand, please push stop right now, go back to week 1 and watch it right the way through, because that way it will make complete sense and you'll get the most value out of it. So we're on week 4 here and we are on this massive subject of conveyancing and surveyors. So at this point in time, obviously we've got our mind, our head right, our emotions are in check, and we've got our property on the market. We've selected our agent, they've worked hard for us, they've got X amount of offers on the table. We've negotiated our way through those offers and we've actually got to a point where we've had offer accept. Now at that point in time when we have agreed that offer, your agent will issue your offer accept letters, one to your buyer, one to yourself. You'll have the name of the person that's purchasing your property, as they will have your name, but that's the only information they'll be given, and a documented price that property sale is agreed at. That's your offer accept letter. One goes out to you, one goes out to your buyer. At this point in time, your agent will ask you for your solicitor's details if you haven't already supplied them. So what you will need to do is go out, if you haven't already done so, and select and instruct a conveyancer / solicitor to act on your behalf to do all of the legal work. Now at the point of when you officially instruct your solicitor and accept the quote, they will send you out a whole bunch of documents for you to fill in, and they'll request some information as well. Now based on what type of property it is that you're selling will dictate what the information will be, what those documents will be. However, they will usually request the original documents from when you purchased the property. So if it's a leasehold, the original lease, and definitely the original deeds. Now there is one form that they send out at the instruction stage that I do want to highlight on right here and now, and that's called your property information form. Now on that form, it's where you dictate what fixtures and what fittings you are going to basically present the property with at the time of when you leave. Now at this point, as I said, this form will dictate what the terms of the property, in other words, the condition of the property and the contents of the property is at the point when the sale completes. So if there are items in there that you don't want to take with you, or could do with not taking with you, or going to dispose of / sell anyway, because you're not taking them with you, it might be an opportunity to actually on this form indicate those forms that you're willing to accept offers, or actually put a price on said item. So, you know, the situation could be you're moving to a brand new place, it's got brand new appliances, and therefore you don't need your dishwasher, you don't need your fridge freezer, and you don't need your cooker because they're already there. You know? Now in this instance here, if the new buyer doesn't take them, then you could be looking at either disposing them or trying to sell them. And that's time consuming, and you might want to avoid having that. So in some cases you might take a look at it and go, right, well, I'm going to leave the white goods and I'm just going to give them and get included in the sale. So you say the fridge is being left in there, X, Y, and Z. But in some circumstances, you know, there might be items that you want to, that you're open to the buyer buying with you in through the process of the property. And this is your opportunity to put an offer in there for them to be able to go, look, yeah, well, I'll accept that. Or maybe they still want it, but they offer you something slightly less. It's that slight little barter again now. But really and truly, the reason why I want to highlight the property information form is because when we come to the point of completing, and I will stress this in next week's episode when we go over exchanging and complete, how you've detailed that property to be in that bit on that form is how you need to leave it. So be very specific, and the form's very specific, as it asks you even about curtain rails, curtains, whether you're leaving blinds, X, Y, and Z. Basically it's a date stamp, it's a condition stamp of the property as the person expects to get it when they get the keys in the hand and the property sale completes. And if you don't leave it in that condition, you are in what we consider breach of contract at that point, because when we exchange and we can make the property legally binding, that's the condition that you're leaving it in. So be very careful, take your time with it, go through it, just to make sure that as you've detailed it on that form is how you can actually leave it when you leave. So once you've filled that form out and filled out the various others, and your solicitor has confirmed that you're officially instructed, there's some information that you need to give to your agent. So you need to give the name of the soliciting firm, the name of the solicitor that is that's handling the case. You also need to give them as much direct dial contact as you can. So direct dial numbers rather than the office number. Obviously direct email address. There's also called a document exchange or DX number that most soliciting firms use and still use. So you want to include that as well. So you'll send it off to your agent, and what your agent will prepare is what we call a sale memorandum. Now this document doesn't go to you, but it does go to, one copy goes to your solicitor and another copy goes to the buyer solicitor, and it's the document that starts the ball rolling. Your solicitor won't be able to start things until they know who they're sending documents to. The other side can't start things until they've received documents through from your solicitor. So getting that sale memorandum is absolutely crucial, because without it, the sales process cannot start. At this point, you'll also need to let your solicitor know whether or not this is a chain sale, i.e., do you have another property that you need to purchase after the sale of this one? As they're going to be a solicitor acting on both sides, they need to know exactly what it is that they're dealing with, so they can act appropriately and make sure the timing of things all line up. Now, once the sale memorandum's been issued by your agent, as I said, one copy goes off to your solicitor, one goes off to the other side solicitor. Now, your solicitor, being the solicitor handling the sale of said property, will start the ball rolling by issuing what we call draft contracts. Now, if it's a freehold, it will just be the draft contract itself. If it's a leasehold, it will be the draft contract and also the lease. Now, what the solicitors will therefore do is, when your solicitor sends that over to the buyer solicitor, the buyer solicitor will comb through that, going through each and every little clause that's in there, and raise questions on things they either don't understand or don't agree with. Now, that's what we call inquiries. So your solicitor sends over draft papers to the buyer solicitor. Buyer solicitor will therefore then raise inquiries, stroke questions, and send them back over to your solicitor. Now, the vast majority of them, your solicitor will have a legal standpoint and an answer for. And so they'll go back and forth. But they may come to you to ask you things to clarify to do with the building, especially if you've had build works done, they'll ask you for certificates. If you've had windows put in, they'll ask you when they were installed, and therefore may ask for certificates off of that, or clarification on various different points along the way. Now, the inquiry stage or deliberation stage, that's the meatiest part of the conveyancing process. And the quicker you can reply answers to your solicitor, and your solicitor can transfer those answers back over, will dictate how fast you can get this sale done. So if you've got time implications on an ongoing purchase, or just on the fact of how quickly you want to wrap this up, it really, really, really will help you to keep an eye on your solicitor and make sure that they are responding to things quickly, but also making sure that you're responding to your solicitor just as quickly, to ensure that the pace of things and momentum of things keeps on going. Your agent will be working alongside you in that respect, making sure that both sides are either inquiring or responding to said inquiries in a timely fashion, in order to keep the momentum of this sale going. Remember, until a sale exchanges, nothing is set in stone. Until a sale exchanges, either party can still pull out. And so it's in nobody's interest at this stage to hamper things or cause unnecessary uncertainty on either part. So just do your part as a seller to make sure that any questions that are asked of you, the answers are delivered in a forthright fashion, and therefore in turn make sure your solicitor transfers them over to the other side in a forthright fashion, and then also just touch base with your agent every now and again to make sure that any further inquiries that are coming back over from the buyer's side, again, come over to you in a timely fashion to make sure we keep the momentum of this thing going and get to the point of where we exchange. Now, I do want to touch on the subject of surveyors for a second. So, when someone purchases your property or agrees to purchase your property, and they're going forward with a mortgage lender, the mortgage lender will therefore then send out and apply for a valuation survey. Now that means a surveyor coming to your property and doing various different checks and what have you to, number one, ensure that the property is safe and sound, and number two, also to make sure that the price that the person has agreed to pay for said property matches up with the market value for that property at that time. Now, please bear in mind in this respect, for the surveyor that's coming in for the purposes of the valuation, they work for the bank. Not the buyer, they work for the bank. If the buyer instructs a home buyer survey, then that's home buyer survey, that surveyor works for them. But the one that I'm highlighting at the moment, this is the surveyor that comes out and he works for the bank. They want to make sure that the value of the property that they're lending on is reflective of an accurate market point for that property at that time, and they also want to make sure that it complies with the T's and C's of the mortgage that the person's applied for, to ensure that if something does happen, that they can actually recoup their money by reselling the house. Now, the reason why I mention surveyors in this is because when the surveyor compiles their report, they may find things that mean that they alter the value of the property. Now, at that point in time, if that does happen, you may get it where the valuations report is discounted, or the mortgage offer is put on hold pending further investigations into certain things. To clarify, let me give you an example. So on my first sale that I ever did, we were selling a property on Queen's Road in Peckham. The surveyor went in and he found damp and raised a couple of other queries, and therefore adjusted the value on the property, according to him, by £30,000. Now, when that happens, understand what they're doing. They are adjusting the amount that they are willing to lend. Now, if that eventuality happens, there's a further discussion or negotiation to take place between yourself and the buyer in order to preserve the deal. Now, the bit I need to stress at this point in time is it doesn't mean that that's the end of the line. It doesn't mean that that's the sale fall through automatically. What his decision is based on is how much the bank is willing to lend. Now, that has an implication on the deal, obviously, because that's going to adjust the finances for said buyer. Now, when that happened with my first sale, what we had to do is go back to the negotiation table between the buyer and the seller and go, right, we've got a deficit now of £30,000. Is there a way that we can get to a meeting point where both sides are agreeable? Again, here's that word, agreeable with our remedy. So that meant that my seller had to come down in her expectations in terms of what she was agreed to sell the property at, and my buyer had to seek external funds from elsewhere to bring his offer level up. So we bridged the gap and met in the middle. I've had other sales where things like damp have come up, and so the surveyors capped the mortgage based on a further damp report, or capped the mortgage based on damp work being completed to a satisfactory level. Again, didn't mean that the deal was off the table. It just meant that there was some extra work that needed to be done. The reason why I mention this here is because for you as a seller, there's some decisions to be made. Going back to market isn't always the best option, and sometimes finding a way to get around this preserves the time scale of things. And it's all about you taking a look and going, right, well, number one, can I do anything? Number two, is this situation completely my liability, or can it be shared between myself and the buyer? Is there a way forward? A lot of the times, in most cases, there is. And it takes a bit of bending on both sides, but we can still find a point that's mutually agreeable and a way that we can move forward. Now, once we've got past that and we've got past the valuer's appointment and the mortgage offers on the table, the inquiries have bounced back and forth and they've all been resolved, we've got to a point where your solicitor is sending the final report out to you, which is the conclusive bit and also the contract for you to sign. We're at that point. We're at the point of exchange. And we're also at the end of today's episode. We deal with that next week. Big meaty one here. I hope that I came over clearly, and there's lots of gems in there for you to guys to move forward and assist and help you in the selling of your property. Anyway, that's me out for this week. Thank you so much for watching. You guys be safe out there, and I'll see you in the forwards.